Welcome back to another exciting episode of Can It Take a K26, the show where we look at a variety of blasters and see if they can be upgraded using a K26 spring. I am your host, Captain Xavier. Today we're going to be taking a look back into hallowed antiquity. I am talking, of course, of the mid to late 90s. We're going to be looking at some vintage blasters. Our first contestant is the Nerf Max Force Eagle Eye. The Eagle Eye was originally released in 1994. It had all sorts of interesting light features. There's supposed to be something up here, but it's been long since lost to the tragedies of time. I assume it's some sort of a scope, and then there was some sort of a light that lit up, and all of that. I'm sure there's... Oh, batteries go in the handle. They don't even screw in. That's cool. I have no idea if the lights actually work or not. It is side prime, like we would see in many of the later blasters, and like many of the blasters from this era, it doesn't have an air restrictor. So I will definitely be patting the plunger head when I do this. It's also barreled for old school mega darts, which I might have one around here somewhere, but I'm not sure that I do anymore. I think I fired it and never found it again. So if I really wanted to use this, I would need to rebarrel it for Elite, which would not be difficult. There's any number of materials that fit in old school Mega and rebarrel to Elite. I think CPVC does it fairly well, actually. Yeah, pretty much. So I would just need a little bit of E-tape probably to get that to seat properly, and then it would be barreled for Elites. So that's neat. But what we want to know, of course, is can this thing take a K26? Let's find out. The first thing we notice is that this thing is geared, which they are fairly stout gears. First hurdle, K26 will fit. The K26 being used in this episode was provided to me by Out of Darts. As you can see, the end is pre-flattened, and it is lovely. Other than that, it's identical to K26 that can be gotten through Karmic Master or any other of the various sources for it. And that is a really flimsy catch spring, so we're going to go ahead and upgrade that while we're in here. Turns out the plunger head is padded. It's got rubber and that actually catches it, which is nice. Here's something I wasn't expecting. The priming bar is actually about half-inch thick cast iron, so they weren't fiddling about with that. All right, now we see if the gears can take it. Yes, they can. Never. A quick and sloppy rebarreling. All right, well, I have no idea what it was hitting before because I didn't have old school Megas and I hadn't rebarreled it, but just throwing the K26 in there and putting on a bit of CPVC to rebarrel it for Elite, it's hitting about 77 FPS, and I suspect that is probably largely due to the fact that the gasket in there is very worn out and is not actually getting good seal and good pressure. It could be a number of other factors, but this could be a fun vintage loadout pistol if you could get the FPF up a little bit. The plunger tube wasn't exactly huge. It wasn't tiny, but it wasn't huge. It was about the size of a night finder, maybe even a little bit smaller, honestly. So that may be where some of the problem is. There is also the barrel has a hole in the side of it, but I'm pretty sure my barrel would have sealed against that. Yeah, it would have. So not sure why the performance is so poor, other than the fact that it's old and that rubber is probably a little bit rotten. But yes, the Eagle Eye will take a K26. On to the next contestant. Our next contestant is the Nerf Max Force Sawtooth. The Sawtooth was released in 1995 and had a number of fairly new features to the Nerf line at the time. It had a collapsing stock, kind of. I mean, it collapses down to there or it can go up to there. It's not a very comfortable stock. The slope that it has here means that when you actually press it up against your shoulder, it kind of wants to ride up over your shoulder, which isn't wonderful, but it's just a neat little feature that it collapses. It's also prime. This one, however, is top prime, but very, very similar looking mechanism to the Eagle Eye just upside down is kind of what it looks like is going on here. And it took a harmonica-style clip, slide clip, vertical, that I unfortunately do not have. So there really is no way for me to actually test fire this once it's all together, but I can at least see if physically it can take a K26, so let's find out! Again, cast iron bolt, just like the previous one. It's held together with extremely coarse thread screws. Nerf screws are usually, or nowadays, are much, much finer thread, but these ones, about 2 rotations and the screws come out, so that's kind of nice. But yes, as you can see, oh, I bet the other one had that as well. It's got a hole in the plunger tube. Well, we don't like that, do we? Similar padded plunger head design. We are gonna deal with that hole first off. These ones are real nice because the spring just comes right off the back, and that is a tragic spring. The one from the Eagle Eye was decidedly thicker and stronger. So again, not a huge plunger tube, but a solid plunger tube. I'll give them that. I really like these screws. They're very easy to work with. All right, here we go. Feels like we're not getting enough compression. Alright, well that unfortunately proved to be a no. It can take K26, the gears can support K26, but the catch mechanism is too far back, and so it can't compress enough to catch. So, that's a no. On to the next contestant. Our next contestant is the Nerf Cyberstrike AutoGrip. The AutoGrip was originally released in 1996. Murder. As part of the Cyberstrike line, they had a whole bunch of really neat blasters that attached to either your head or your arms, or neat little gizmo features that were really cool. This one, of course, strapped to your wrist and was a flip-up blaster. It would hide down, you pull the little peg, and it'd flip up into your hand, which was really cool. I have attached it to this skateboarding, rollerblading, arm guard, brace-looking thing because it fit in it so beautifully. And so yeah, it attaches there under your hand. You can actually release it with your finger. That pulls out, which unfortunately is not the most inconspicuous of things. But it can be made to actually flip right up into your hand, which is kind of cool. And then of course it's got this hose where the dart goes to, which is obviously not the most efficient of systems, but this is obviously supposed to be a last-ditch effort point-blank range kind of blaster, so you're not terribly worried about range. But we want to see if it can take a K26, and that's going to require me to get this open, which I'm not even sure is possible, but I'm going to give it a try. How did I get this in here? Like that? Okay. Unfortunately, it looks like this entire lower section is not screwed together. It's all glued together, and I am not willing to completely destroy this blaster trying to get it apart, which is sad because actually, honestly, given the size, I really doubt K26 would fit even if you could get this. This is probably all you need to remove, and you might be able to boil it off, but I'm not willing to destroy this blaster trying to find out because this is just entirely too cool of a blaster. So I'm gonna have to go ahead and say no and put it back together. So that was a no. However, it was, of course, barreled for Old School Mega, and I now have my handy little Old School Mega to Modern Elite adapter. So we can see how well it fires Elites just by switching the barrel. Probably not wonderfully, but that is not the point. So, rebarreled for Modern Elite, it is hitting about 55 FPS, which is less than stock, but to be fair, this is still stock and is 20 21 years old, so it has some excuses. But I still think it's a neat concept, the whole flip-up idea, because when it's flipped down, you can, in fact, still use your hand. You can actually use another blaster, and then you can drop it and flip it up and prime it, and you'd have a neat little hideaway blaster. So I still think it's a really cool idea, and I approve of the colors as well. So that's a no. On to our final contestant. Our final contestant is the Cyber Strike Rototrack. And this is an entirely cool blaster. A friend of mine picked this up at Goodwill a few years ago, and I was insanely jealous. And once I started this channel, he decided that it would be better off with me because he wanted to know what it could do. So, this is a early slamfire only blaster. It has a wrist strap. It straps to your arm, which is clearly meant for smaller people than me, and has a belt on the front, which is the part that's usually missing, but in this one we in fact still have it. And then you prime it, you fire it simply by pulling this back, and it fires and rotates as it goes. And it is of course barreled for old school Mega, and rebarreling all of these wouldn't be difficult. I mean, just some electrical tape and some CPVC, and you could rebarrel it perfectly easily. And I think this would make either a magnificent overslung blaster or definitely overslung. Take off the handle and strap this to the top of a gun so the gun is inside the barrel, and then you have this on the top and you can just crank it to fire it, because it's just a neat concept. But what we want to know is, can it take a K26? Let us see if we can figure out how you take this thing apart. Preferably without breaking it, because that would be a tragedy. That is a very interesting plunger design. The spring is behind the plunger rod rather than inside the plunger. Well, surprisingly, that's a yes. It took K26 just fine. I could probably shorten it a little bit, but not by much. And it rotates as you pull. That's when it rotates, and the actual plunger head or plunger tube comes back slightly, and then pops back forward to seal against the back of the belt chambers before you actually complete the pull. The downside is with K26, it's a really hard pull, and it leads to a really inaccurate blaster. So inaccurate, I couldn't actually get it to chrono. Couldn't get it to fire through the chronograph because trying to get it to line up straight just wasn't happening, because you kind of have to mean it. But it works, and if you had it strapped to a blaster that you were then actually shouldering, you might be able to actually somewhat accurately aim it, but I think it would be more of a curiosity. Rebarreling it did in fact work. You just a little bit of E-tape and some CPVC. You could rebarrel it all the way for Elite, and doesn't seem to be having any undue wear and tear. It would of course eventually break the blaster, so I will probably take the K26 back out just because I've always wanted to get my hands on one of these, and it would be a shame to break one of the parts because I upgraded it. Though I know enough people with the skills necessary to probably mill me or make me any part I wanted out of metal or some sort of metal. So yeah, there you have it. The Rototrack can take a K26. Let's recap. All right, for those of you keeping score at home or who just skipped to the end to see the results, that was a yes for the Eagle Eye, a no for the Sawtooth, a no for the AutoGrip, and a yes for the Rototrack. The one that surprised me was the Sawtooth. The mechanism is almost identical to the Eagle Eye, except it's upside down, but the catch mechanism is a little bit further back, and as a result, this one couldn't get enough compression, but this one could. This one, it might take K26 if you could get the plunger system apart, but it's glued together and I didn't want to break it. These two you'd have to rebarrel them or somehow get your hands on a lot of old school Mega Darts. Either would work perfectly good. So there you have it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, requests for future episodes, just want to tell me that I am a monster for opening up and messing with vintage blasters, go right ahead in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching.